is stephendiego, and you're tuned in to Breaking Down the Breakdown. On today's episode, we are going to talk about experiences working in a different country and how this may affect our mental health. OMG, what is good, guys? This is kind of weird for me because like interviewing really good friends of mine has never been a thing on this show, but I guess now it is. So if you guys have tuned in or this is your first time tuning in, it is Mental Health Awareness Week, and for every day of this week, I have an episode out. Don't worry, I'm making sure the content is not rushed or anything like that, because this is actually super important to me. And I realize, what better way to kind of raise awareness about these things than to have an episode every day of this motherfucking week. Anyway, hello. This is Breaking Down the Breakdown with Steven and my really great friends, Henry and Paul. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello. For you guys who are not watching the video and are just listening to the streams, they're super cool. They're making faces right now, but no, I'm kidding. They're totally not. No, they are. You're so odd. Anyways, hi guys. How y'all been? What's good? What's going on?
Not mad. Been in a pretty relaxed state considering what's been happening. I think it's the routine of what both Henry and I are doing with our work. It's kind of put us in a different kind of mentality for sure.
That's great. So I just want everybody to know, what do you guys do? You can both answer at the same time or answer right after the other.
Unison together?
Really yeah, you can do it in unison. If you can do it in unison, that'd be great.
Yeah, no. Well, we can do it separately first, and just to kind of break down a little bit of that. It's understandably, both Paul and I, we went through school together. We did a lot of things very much similarly. So I currently work for a school board, and I am working as a long-term coverage teacher, essentially, working towards getting that permanent position job, and hopefully attaining that one day. Hopefully soon. As you get older, you want to have that consistency and that assurance, let's just say. Completely. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the exact same as Henry. I'm still a long-term occasional as well, waiting for that permanent opportunity. I think the only main differences between the two of us in our positions is the different school boards we're in and the subjects we're currently covering or teaching. Yeah.
Cool.
But other than that, I'm in the same boat.
What is with my friends and being teachers? My goodness. Like, honestly, my podcast listeners are probably like, yo, Steven, like, are you sure you're not a teacher too? Like, all of your fucking friends are just teaching left and right. Honestly. Anyways, for me, it was important for me to get them to introduce themselves, because what we are talking about today kind of has something to do with teaching, kind of. It just so happens that, they are the perfect candidates to talk about these things. But all of us at some point in our lives, well, I wouldn't say all of us, I would say majority of us has had a chance to kind of explore new horizons, whatever that may, look like. But for some of us, it's about starting over somewhere new. It could be a new school, it could be a new job, it could be a totally new career, right? Or it could be in a new country. Now, for people like me who are immigrants, this is actually super important for me to talk about. And this isn't about, like, oh, well, I came from this country and then now I'm here and this is my struggles. I mean, I would like to explore that later on, but I've always wanted to kind of have an episode that's focused on, let's say, citizens of a country like Canada moving somewhere else to kind of start over, because we've always heard of what it's like to struggle moving to a place when you barely know English, when you don't know the language. But we have these two fine young men moving to the UK to start over as teachers. Now, it is the same job, but so different at the same time, right? And it's one of those things where people assume that, well, they're just moving to a different place per se, it's still the same occupation, still the same language. That shouldn't be that hard, right? And I kind of just want to expose the fact that, no, bitch, it's actually fucking hard. So, I have him here with me just to kind of talk about it. I want to kind of start with Henry, because what did you, like, for you, Henry, what did you feel like was the biggest difference about being a teacher here and being a teacher there?
I think one of the it kind of has to go back to our teachers college programs and what we had to learn in Ontario and Canada. Every province has different qualifications and different things you have to go through to attain your certification to teach. And luckily enough, our certification actually qualifies us to teach English pretty much across the world.
Amazing.
So being from an English-speaking country, we can take our degree to teach anywhere around the world. But the difference was really the culture of the education system.
Right.
I find that although the UK has their own benefits and their own growth and pros and cons kind of thing, I found that the hardest part for me was it just really felt like the onus was less on the kids of learning, like to have the kids learn, and it was more on the onus was more on teachers to give the learning, and to ensure that the students have that so-called to meet that grade expectation, right? It was just ticking off the check marks, exactly like Paul was showing up there. Like it really was like, I remember doing our report cards and such. It was just a whole bunch of boxes that to check and check and check. Were they doing it? Were they achieving it? Were they doing it? I mean, I think that's a great idea too. Like the whole mark system is another thing we can debate. Right. But it just felt like there was so much of a facade in terms of what it looked like in our books and our evidence and everything. It just looked like you were just trying to make stuff so that it looked good, right? And I just really didn't like how they had that governing body. I forget what it's called, but that always came. Do you remember what it's called? Yeah, Ofsted. Yeah, or not? Yeah. So they came to our schools and they often judged our books, like the students' work. They judged our learning. They judged our planning. They judged everything. Like it just felt like there was no freedom for teachers to really have a chance to really do their own thing.
Right.
Which Ontario and Canada, we have the privilege of doing that a bit more.
Right.
We can take what the curriculum says and we can kind of just be like, this is what we're going to do, and however we want to do it, as long as you meet those expectations, that was great. But I found in the UK it just wasn't that way. Maybe it was a bit different for Paul, but like when I was doing year 4 teaching, like as a homeroom teacher,
right?
We all did the same thing. Like there was 3 classes of year 4 kids, so equivalent would be like grade 3 kids here, but that age group, and we would just be planning the exact same thing and doing the exact same thing, the same paperwork, the same worksheets, the same. And I just felt like there was no freedom for me to be able to kind of like carpe diem, take it, just go do something, like I just didn't have that same kind of freedom I felt as an educator to really implement my philosophies and what I believe in, what I practice, right? So it felt a bit restrained. So that was a big difference for me.
But like here in Canada, I guess like you're able to kind of put a little bit of your personality in how you teach then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not to say my personality wasn't there, but the lessons didn't have my personality anymore, right?
Yeah, because you kind of have to like,
I have to follow what everyone else was doing.
Yeah, it's like you cannot diversify or like divulge from this thing, right?
Yeah,
divert. Sorry, like.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, to be fair, I'm not sure if that was just the schools that I was at, because I was mainly teaching in inner city London, and both the schools I taught at for long term, I had done pretty much the same thing. Like we had to follow what all the other same year grade teachers were doing, and it just felt like I had really not as much freedom as I would like to have had. But at the same time, I did learn some great stuff from it, like how to kind of manage the kids. And there's a conception that in the education world that the London inner city kids are some of the worst kids in the world, and if you can manage them, you can kind of manage anything else. So
well, shit. I mean, I guess we'll get back to that later because I do want to find out if that's true or not. But Paul, how do you feel about the whole thing? Like,
so meeting a lot of other international teachers while there, and like being back in Canada, most of us, when I've talked to them, all pretty much agreed on one thing, describing teaching in the UK compared to our home country, wherever that was for the people that I talked to. Teaching in the UK felt like boot camp.
Oh my God.
Yes, and it's funny because I wasn't even the one that came up with that term. Like I've had
Right.
people tell me that, and I agreed because of the what is it, the classroom management, the behavior of the students typically seemed to be on the higher threshold of demanding for some reason,
Mhm.
for whatever that could be. And a
Huh.
lot of what Henry said, I did agree in terms of the restriction. And one of the biggest thing I realized being in a few schools semi long term in the years I was in London, you could clearly tell which schools were expected to have that higher organization called Ofsted come observe them because everyone is so much more high strung. They're
Mhm.
so much more rigid and stressed and frantic and really prioritizing what will make them look good over the wellness of the students. And it
Oh
was
my
very sad to
goodness.
see multiple times in the 5 years I was there. So I completely agree with Henry. So in terms of the mental stability of
Yeah.
teachers, it was very scary how different it was. Like the first time I go, why is everyone why is everyone so high strung? And then they say, oh,
Yeah.
Osted's
Yeah.
coming, and they would make it so normal. Like, oh, Osted's coming. They have they have the power to look at us and shut us down, but no big.
That's
Happens every 3 years.
insane. What?
Yeah, yeah. They have the authority to shut down the school if they deem it inadequate,
Oh
right?
my goodness.
So that so that in itself is very different in terms of the education system because we don't really have that kind of intimidating
No, for sure.
kind
But
of
I mean,
organization here.
I can only imagine then that it's like,
uh,
for people who try to get into teaching because they want to teach,
yeah.
that's a huge blow because it's,
Speaking of that, like,
Yeah.
yeah, especially for both Henry and myself, I believe teaching in the
yeah.
UK was basically our first real experience teaching anywhere, right?
Mhm.
Because we were
Yeah.
pretty much straight out of graduating from university. And sadly, I've met a lot of international teachers there, and at least half of them, from what I can recall, decided not to teach anymore when they
Oh
moved
my
back to their home
God.
country because most of
Yeah.
them taught for the first time like us and experiencing it in the UK or anywhere maybe made
Yeah.
them think I don't want to do this. I don't feel good.
Oh my
And it's happened.
goodness.
Yeah. And that made me personally feel quite lucky in the sense that I don't feel like I am convincing myself to like it. It was very difficult. And I'm not
Well,
saying it's much easier here, but the fact that despite all the difficulties, I still genuinely enjoyed and still do enjoy teaching is a blessing for
yes.
myself and something I did not find myself having to convince.
I guess we can
Mhm.
look at it also in a different way. That's like, yeah, it's true. Like that is like boot camp, and it's kind of one of those
Oh
things where
man.
it's like, do I really want to be a teacher, or do I, or am I really just doing this just because it was something that I could just do, right?
It's a
Because
Yeah.
good
I
shock.
do, yeah, right. Because like I mean, being in university and being surrounded by people, and we kind of like when we start to asking each other, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And we're like, well, I kind of want to do this, but I'm only really qualified to teach, so I guess I'm just gonna try to pick up teaching. And
Yeah.
I guess we can look at it like no matter how shitty it felt doing all that stuff, it really puts into perspective, kind of like, okay, oh my god, I am having the worst time of my motherfucking life right now, but this
Mm.
is actually what I want to do, and I need to stick it out.
Yeah.
And I felt like this what
Uh,
happened to the two of you.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna comment on that as well because I had met what I can't remember what the program's called, but there's a teacher in training program in the UK,
Mhm.
which I totally disagree with completely. Like I forget what the name is completely, but they essentially throw you into the classroom with like minimal. There's no support in any kind of way. So in Canada, in Ontario specifically, we have what we call practicums where we kind of learn with a teacher as our
Yes.
mentor, kind of help us go through it. Whereas in this program, so this is only one of two programs in the UK. It's not the only program. I'm not saying
Right.
that it's the worst thing in the world, but
Right.
you trial by fire. They literally threw this person. I felt so bad because she was like in my, she was teaching with me in my group of three teachers. And I felt really bad because she had no idea what she was doing, how to
Mm.
teach, no skills in terms of like, how to manage the kids. She told me that she had essentially applied for the program, had what like a couple of months just like to kind of have some of the theoretical things talked about. Here's some books, blah blah blah, blah, and you kind of have to just learn it, right? I mean, I think a lot of jobs are like that too, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't promote a love for the job, right? Like teaching is something that you have to really nurture the students. And if you can't nurture yourself to really love the job, you can't nurture the students the same way. And when I was watching her, she would often break down and cry after classes because of how whole that situation was. And to be fair, again, like she signed up for it, yada, yada. I mean, nobody has to sign up for these positions, but it really isn't a great way to have and promote teaching, right? Like as a viable career for people who really want that job. Because even people who thought like they wanted to be able to make a difference to some students because they had gone through something in their own school life, they're not going to have that passion for it because they've lost it because of how difficult just the classroom management can be. Right? Like especially with kids who go through so many different trials of their own day, right? Like they're not gonna, these teachers are not going to thrive or find that passion that they might have thought they had, right? And that, like Paul said, like a lot of these international friends that we had met, teachers, some of them came back and taught, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of people who like even myself, I questioned it, like, is this something really I want to do for the rest of my life? Am I okay with it? And then I think coming back and teaching in Ontario and having that opportunity to actually see what it looks like here and remembering what my practice was like.
You're just kind of like, oh my God.
It was like, I'm thankful that I'm teaching here and not teaching in the UK or anywhere else. I also want to double back on one thing that Paul had mentioned. I think one of the biggest, and this is my belief, personal belief, I don't think it's necessarily true, but I think the biggest problem might be that the UK's education system is highly privatized. And I think compared to Ontario, where it's completely public, it's publicly funded. The private sector had to hire something called Ofsted, which is the governing body, and they had too much power to shut schools down, essentially, right? Or put them through a rigorous training program to fix the problems, which nobody wanted to deal with, which is why people put on these huge facades. So when you look at, and I had done a little bit of research about this, like when you look at some of the highest stressed school systems in terms of like just teachers and like students and wellness and well-being, the programs that are often near the bottom of that list I found were schools in the UK and the US. And both of them are highly privatized school systems, and they're not really publicly funded in any kind of way. Even the public schools in the UK, although they're called public schools, they're still privately funded. So that confused me. They had like three tiers. There's like academies, public schools, and one other one. It baffled my mind. It just, to me, sounds like there was no investment in the education system, and they didn't believe in it, or something.
It's literally just about the money. It's kind of like,
it was about money.
These people are paying us this much. We better show our fucking asses why they have to pay us this much and why we're gonna have to raise tuition next year, kind of deal.
And I don't think there's a raised tuition, but like they had to buy into I believe it's still technically, it's public in the sense where you get money allocated based on your students' needs and everything, and so you still get that money. You're not actually paying school like a private school here.
Okay.
But it's just, it wasn't a what we call a board of schools. It was individual schools buying for your enrollment, essentially.
That provided a lot of inconsistencies with
So when a school can essentially say, hey, all the best students come to my school, what what does that say about
the others?
System, right? What does it say about privilege there? Like are those kids are already going to get the best of the best? And the schools, you can really see some of them are super run down. Other schools are really beautifully built and have like theater stages and have all these things that like you couldn't even fathom. But it's because they had the right enrollment and they had the right population, right? The schools that were, and I kid you not, some of the schools I supplied at, that you can tell the area is rich because their school is highly funded, and then you start realizing, oh, this kid's parents are doctors, this kid's parents are lawyers, this kid's parents are, and it just is really, 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 because of that privatization of education, it was very difficult for some of these kids to thrive, and even harder for the expectation of teachers to, and this is the secret in the UK, you get a pay raise based on how well your students do, right? And that's a
No
huge
wonder,
bonus.
no wonder all these people are so fucking stressed out because they see their fucking kids and they're like, "Holy shit, how the fuck am I going to get money?"
How do I raise this kid from a C grade to an A grade? So
Oh
I
my
meet my expectations
goodness.
to get my pay raise.
I mean, look, I'm not in the UK. I'm not a teacher, and I'm stressed out listening to this.
Yeah, it's tough.
That is insane. Okay, so I mean, I guess
Sorry, I had
there's
to throw
some
that in there.
consolation. It's fine. It's cool. You know, like you had, yeah, you know, it was great to know what was going on, right? And the thing is, what I do want to ask, do you think that it might have been maybe easier for you guys because it's like what Paul said, it is your first time teaching there, right? Like it was your first experience teaching was there, right? Do you think that if like somebody who had taught here already decided, you know what, actually I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to go and go to the UK and teach there instead, do you think they would have had a much harder time kind of adapting to it? Just because it's like, you know, for you, it was almost like you scaled back, right? For you, it's like going from there to here. That was like boot camp, and I'm ready for all the shit that goes down here. But as a teacher coming from, you know, let's say the US or Canada or wherever else, and then going there and it's like, wait, what? This is what happens here? What would you guys have preferred, Paul? Like, would you have preferred the way it went, the way it happened, where it was like, you know, like I'm just gonna teach there first and then come back?
So if I'm imagining this correctly in my head, I would prefer to have done it the way it did.
Okay.
I feel like if I taught here first and then went to the UK and I taught there, I think there'd be even more of a culture shock with teaching specifically and not just being in a different place. And now having experienced both from the order that I did, I personally much prefer the teaching culture here. And because it was my first time and it was a hard, difficult time, regardless, even if we weren't adjusting to a different teaching culture, it was still a difficult teaching experience. But that boot camp experience really helped me, if not more, to appreciate teaching even more so here, right? Like as opposed to just teaching here, even if I never went to the UK and found out how they taught there. Like having experienced that first and then coming here made me appreciate the teaching culture here much more, regardless of the order I would have done it. I feel like if it was the other way around, I would have missed teaching here after
like,
if I experienced it first. Yeah.
Dude, if I started here, I wouldn't even leave. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's true.
I wouldn't even bother.
Basically.
Wait, okay, but that's the thing, right? So like with that being said, so because a lot of people, and I guess this is why you guys ended up there. Was it that hard getting a teaching job here first, right? Straight out of teachers college?
The market at the time when we graduated, you know, a couple of years back, I don't know if you want to say how when we graduated, but essentially the market was a bit too saturated for us. And I think realistically, it just wasn't the right time, in my opinion, to just jump into it. And we know friends who had tried getting onto teaching boards, and some of them waited for several years before they actually got anything, and others got them pretty quickly. Right. I think it was really any way could have gone. So realistically, I'm glad we had chosen to do as we did. I know I personally grew more as a personal growth as opposed to just the career growth. I think that there's more of that, right? And I think I valued that a lot too. So, yeah.
Oh, I completely agree.
You're just kind of like, well, that's, whew, my goodness. Yeah, I am just glad that I did not want to ever teach ever. Like, you know, like I feel like for somebody like me, and this is where I kind of like wanted to go with this, is like, I guess no one's just gonna come right out and say like, you know, like, oh, I have like mental health disorders, but I want to be a teacher kind of deal, right? And it's like, with that kind of pressure kind of looming over everybody's heads, right? Like, and like what you said with that girl that like just, you know, would cry every time, right? did you guys ever experience that within yourselves? And I know you guys are very strong people. Like I know you guys, like we've been friends for a while now, and you guys are really great. But it mental health stuff or like anything that like it doesn't discriminate,
Of
No.
course.
right? Like, has there ever been a moment when you guys were there where you just kind of questioned, like, holy shit, like, why the fuck am I doing this to myself? Paul, I want to start with you.
I'm thinking very hard.
I feel like it's a no.
I'm thinking very hard, and I'm trying to relive the 5 years I was there, and I
Oh,
bypassed the first two because the first two was like the honeymoon phase for me personally.
oh my goodness. So
So
okay, wait, hold on. But that's interesting. So I
yeah,
would I would have thought that the first few would have been the
the
worst because
hardest.
because you had to adapt. So what made that actually the honeymoon phase for you? Like what made that really fun or whatever?
So I thought the same, and it was my personally, it was my first time living out on my own because I
Okay.
always lived at home with my family. So this was
Right.
a big jump for me, and I'm not just moving to a house or like different building. I'm moving to a different continent, right?
Yeah.
So the first month was me just being like, whoa, I feel like a tourist. I don't live here. Like, whoa, right?
Oh,
Everything's new,
okay.
which turned into half a year, and then okay, I'm getting a bit more settled in. I have a place I can live in. I have a school that I'm teaching at. I'm a bit more grounded,
Yeah.
but there's still so many things I haven't seen. There's still so
Right.
many things I'm learning. The accent, just
Yeah.
seeing, like there's just too much stimulation for me that kind of veered me off from the fear of all the unknowns I had
Hmm.
personally. I think that's the best way to put it. The first year or two, I was too stimulated by all the different new experiences that put me on a honeymoon high.
Okay.
Um, and when I started to get more grounded and more of a local than a tourist in my third year and going,
Right.
that's when more of the thoughts started to like, okay, there's a bit of routine. Oh man, okay, I'm noticing the patterns that would cause me to think sometimes like, oh man, what do I do? Or like, what am I doing? Or
Right.
what should I be doing? And those did happen after all that. And some
Okay.
of those would include, I mean, in my from my career path there, I did, to put it simply, I was at three different schools long term.
Okay.
And the transition between the schools itself was pretty difficult because even if teachers are in high demand, there were a lot of processes I had to go through, and they were different between the three schools, which made it confusing.
Oh my God.
That yeah. Again, I think half of the reason is because it's all privatized and it's not
Yes.
standard in any way. Um, yeah, one of the big things was how's the area? How are the kids? Is it going to be as crazy as it was last? And thoughts of do I still want to go through this again? Why am I even afraid of this? Like I know I like
Right. Like
teaching,
you've done
right?
this like a million
Yeah, so
times.
those thoughts did poke in my head, and
Uh,
not related to teaching. It would be uh having to move out from the first or second place I rented out and finding another place.
I mean,
It
yeah, I
was
mean
a
that's always
little bit
stressful,
ahead. Yeah, of
like
course, right? Like I feel like I'm still like thinking as I'm talking, kind of
no, but you know
blabbering.
what? Here's the thing though, right? Like, and this I'm not trying to be like, I want you to dig deep
No, of
and see if
course.
there's something
No, no.
dramatic, right?
No,
But
of course not.
if anything, the way you respond, the way you react to things, it shows that you generally had a good time teaching there.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
anything, like it might have been
Yes.
tough, right? But for you, it was nice. It was a great experience,
Oh yes.
like regardless
Yes.
of what had happened, right?
Yeah.
So moving on to Henry,
I
I
like
want
to
to know
say
about
like
you.
we just I want to add to it, like I think it's also important that we validate everyone's their personal experiences, because
Yeah,
I think talking about wellness today, um, we always neglect to talk about the people who also have those good moments too,
yeah,
right? Like it's not always about,
Yeah.
oh, I'm down in a ditch, right? It's not
exactly.
always about that. Um, and I think it's worth recognizing that we have good days and we have good moments too, right? That's part of our growth, our
Yeah.
personal growth.
And that's why honestly it was very nice and it was refreshing for me. And it was honestly it's great seeing slash hearing you even say I'm still thinking about these things as we speak because it's right there that you can see that, hey, dude, like I know, I know, like it's Mental Health Awareness Week. I know we want to talk about these things, but it's like what Henry said, right? Like, I want people to see it from both sides. You know,
Yeah.
people, it's like for everything hard that happened, there is something so rewarding that it doesn't even matter how hard it was. Like, you would go back to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You would relive that experience because you know what? That's what made you the teacher you are now. That's what made you the person you are now. And those experiences were actually really fun. And honestly, live it, right? Like embrace that. And I think it's great. I honestly think that's amazing, Paul.
Yeah, it's okay to have a good life, man.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel
man.
bad
Like,
about having a good time in your day.
Yeah, it's not.
There's no
Yeah,
shame. I think
exactly.
in order to have that better mental health talk, it really is being allies with each other, and it doesn't mean because I had a good time, I feel bad.
Yeah, you know, like
of course.
I almost wanted to. I almost felt like in your voice, it's like, fuck, I don't want to sound like.
I be feeling so good about my experience.
Say
like,
it, come on.
Like, what do you? That's your experience. That's part of it.
For sure, yeah.
It's important to acknowledge that too.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna close it off by saying, basically, I was surprised at how easily I transitioned. That was an awakening call for me. I was surprised at that.
And I want to get back to that after we speak to Henry, because you know there's obviously questions from people like me who, you know, transitioning towards things is actually one of the most daunting things I could ever think about or do.
Yeah.
And this is why I've never really left the country unless I really had to. And but Henry, and I have to tell the audience, this is why I kind of handpicked Paul and Henry here, because like, you know, like I've known them for a while and they've both told me their experiences there, and girl, it is like night and day. And you know, and the thing is, like, it's not like, and Henry will say it's not like he didn't have a good time while he was there, but it's just the way that they told their stories to me and how it impacted them. It was so different, but it's kind of interesting because it kind of turned them into the same person. It's weird. like you guys are actually super similar in so many fucking ways, but different. Obviously, you know, you're different people, right? But it's just I felt like, and this is where there's a saying, and I don't really remember the saying, but like sometimes, you know, when they say pressure creates diamonds or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the same pressure is not gonna create a diamond out of somebody if that kind of pressure is not right for that person.
Yeah.
And I felt like what happened between the two of you had to happen. And I'm gonna let Henry tell his side about what happened. So Henry, I know you like the UK.
Yeah.
But in terms of transitioning, I think I thought you transitioned amazingly well, but I could have been wrong.
Yeah.
So how was it like for you?
I think even before that, like, I don't think I've told you guys this before either, really, but even before I decided to move, the question I asked myself was, why? Why did I decide to do that?
Oh.
And I think the real big struggle I had for many years, like even having the support from you guys and even from other friends, I still felt something was missing. Mm-hmm. Right? I just always felt like I just didn't find or know what my calling was, or where I was going with my life, or what was going to fill that missing gap in my life, or whatever it was. I wasn't sure, and I couldn't figure it out. And oftentimes I felt lonely, and I felt troubled in different ways. And it really kind of pushed me to think, like, maybe it's just what it is right now. Maybe it's the present situation. Maybe it's that I need a fresh start somewhere. I needed something different, something new. Right. And I think that was the initial motive for why I left to begin with. It's not because I don't love my family or my friends here, or whatever the case may be. It was really that I just couldn't figure out what was missing. Okay. And on top of course, you know, the searching for that job kind of thing, and, you know, what's the next totem in my life. Yes. It just really was, I needed to know what it was and grow a little more, right? Like it really was that growing up a little bit more, because spent years in university, you know, fooling around, playing games, you know, doing the usual that was other, you know, early teen 20s Asian kid would do, you know what I mean? Like, that's just what it was. And it just never found my purpose. And then, so I moved, you know, I decided hey, I know Paul had left, I think it was a year before I did, or a year and a half before I did. And I knew that even if I left, I wasn't going to be completely alone, which was great. I knew I has a little bit of stability there if I needed something, which thankfully he was there, because I can tell you, maybe Paul, you remember this, but when I landed in the UK, I had like 200 pounds. Like, I didn't have a lot of money. I had nothing.
Oh, money. I was like,
Yeah.
Henry, you were never that big.
I'll change British pounds.
Yeah, British
Quid,
pounds, GBP,
quid,
you know.
Quid.
Sterling, you know, what do we say? Quids, you know. I really didn't have money. I accumulated enough money to get there, right? I worked enough to make money to pay for my visa, to pay for my flight, to pay for whatever, and I still had a little bit of pocket change left, right? So essentially, I was bumming off of Paul and some housemates for what was like almost a month, I felt, before I managed to get a few jobs in and get paid. And I kid you not, but that's another stress. So doubling back on your question, I think it really was not too bad when I first left, because I think at that point to leave, you're just kind of like, here we go.
Yeah, like, like new adventure awaits us.
On your new adventure, you packed your stuff up. You're like, you got your first Pokemon. You're ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're just on your way now to start this new thing. Then you got to catch them all, right? Somehow.
Yeah.
So it really was quite all right. Like I think I didn't really have any fears or anything come in until I pretty much. Honestly, I didn't feel any fear. I literally felt sadness more than anything else. Like when I packed my last thing, I felt a bit of relief as well at the same time, because like, this is my life. It fits into 2 suitcases essentially, my entire life, and that was a little sad, but also kind of exciting. I had to learn to be much more minimalistic, and then getting on the flight was a bit exciting. And I kid you not, like I was nervous on the flight because you know I'm flying by myself to this country that I don't know anything about. I've never been to before. And I still remember getting on that flight, and the attendant just offered me, like, what kind of drink would you like? I'm like, a bottle of wine, a sample bottle of wine, like a little, little thing, right?
He is fancy.
And you guys know I don't really drink, right? Like I really don't drink. So I took that because I thought it would help the flight time pass, and it really did. I knocked out. And then I flew, right? So I didn't know.
Lucky.
I didn't feel
we know you knocked out.
Like I knocked out. I didn't feel anything. I woke, next thing I woke up, I'm like, oh, I'm at my connecting flight. Time to get on my next flight. And then I didn't really feel anything because I was greeted by the company that hired me, which is great. Like I think they really did a good job to try and really, and I think Paul, you would attest to it too. They really tried to allow foreign teachers to come in and kind of help you settle in a little bit, right? They had prearranged a number of things for me because, like, honestly, I would not have known how to arrange a bank appointment to set up my bank account,
right?
Or set up or how to get away from the airport to where I need to go, right? Like, so realistically, it was great that they did that. If that wasn't there, I think I would have had a whole new level of stress because, like, I have this map. I'm like, don't even have a phone that works, no GPS, nothing. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, how do I get this? I'm sure I would have figured a plan, but like, it just definitely brought down that stress level and really helped with just acclimatizing with that area.
Right.
Because again, it's a new continent. It's way overseas. We're thousands of kilometers, tens of thousands of kilometers away from home, right? And it really was a very unique combination of emotions, and you really was that roller coaster of like, oh, I'm excited, but then like, oh no, what this? But then also at the same time, I had done my best to set up myself up for success,
for sure,
right? And again, I didn't really feel much stress too badly, even when I was living off of the 200 pounds or something or whatever. Honestly, maybe I was just living through hysteria, but like I was laughing because I'm like, this is what I got right now to work with. So I'm poor. This is what it's like to have like nothing.
That's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, like next to nothing. And I'm thankful that I even had a roof, and again, having friends there was helpful.
For sure.
Otherwise, it would have been super boned, right? Like moving to this place
like landing in there.
Yeah, like it was really it was tough, right? Don't get me wrong, like it was not necessarily the easiest thing, and I think as we all know, moving is hard.
Right.
And I can talk about the story a bit later, but my second year, I ended up moving 3 times in 1 year. It was
Oh man, yeah.
and I remember Paul had to cover me for a little bit, for like a month or two, before I moved and left again, because I was just fed up. Like I had left my living situation 3 times within a year.
Yeah, that's
right?
insane. I mean,
It was too much. I just couldn't do
so
it.
is it just kind of like the environment that you were surrounded by that made you want to just get up and leave, or is it more?
No, actually, well, we can get into the story a bit later, maybe, but like, it was involuntary. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't leaving because I wanted to.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gobsmacked because it's one of those things. Like 3 times though, Henry.
Yeah.
You were
Once a year is bad
involuntarily
enough.
moved
I had to move
3
3 times. Yeah, it was hectic in a year. I don't even know if it covered a full year in that span.
But who? Okay, and I just want to ask. I mean, who is in charge of being able to do that to you?
I don't know. I don't think anyone purposely did that to me. Just the situation of things happened.
Okay, so things just happened, and it's just
like,
how it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with that? Because, and again, like you're already in a different place. Like I would hope at this point that you may have had.
Well, I had my first year under my belt already that time, so I was feeling a bit
but
more
I'm talking about support system.
Yeah.
It was like there. So this is where I kind of want to get to, right? It's one of those things where during that time, Paul, did you feel like you had a really good support system with what you were, going through, or with how you had set yourself up socially?
Yes, I would say I did. I was fortunate enough to have found a good number of individuals that clicked with me that were very good at being my support systems as locals in the country.
Right.
Providing me with their knowledge. They're friendly, friendly. And it's like the people I met were quote unquote long-term support systems, and great individuals that I met, and I was lucky to be part of that. Really did help me feel grounded as well as a local tourist.
I like that. I was gonna say, you really integrated well, I think so.
I did. I feel like I did more naturally than I thought I would. Again, a lot of this experience for me was learning about myself and how easily I was able to adapt to a lot of the situations.
Right.
It was like the main growth, and like Henry mentioned this before, and we can talk about it later, but the main growth that I felt as an individual was huge. Like when I came back to Canada for good after 5 years, I felt like the same guy, but like a whole new version. It's like it's a
brand new model.
Like a phoenix. It's like
right?
Like
I felt so different being the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God,
and a lot of it wasn't from too much uncomfortable growths. Like it wasn't a lot of growth pains. It was a lot of growth moments where I just found myself going, oh, whoa. Oh, I didn't know I think this way. Whoa, okay. Oh. This is what I do in this situation. Interesting. It was that kind of experience for me. And I'm sure a good part of it was the support system I had, not just from people that I knew, like Henry, which helped, but it was a lot of the local people that I stayed with during the many years I was there. Yeah.
It's like Jean Grey taking a whole bottle of Tylenol and becoming the Dark Phoenix, Just like all of a sudden she's not in pain anymore. Now Henry kind of froze a little bit. Henry, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you guys.
Okay, your camera just froze. As long as I can hear you, that's all that really matters. Now throwing it back to you though, did you feel like you had kind of the same support system that maybe Paul had during that time when you were dealing with this?
I mean, I had my own systems of support.
Right.
Which was great.
Yes.
And I think having Paul in that system of support as well, moving to a new country, was good. Like I could not complain about that kind of stuff. Like it was great. I think for me, part of the reason why I even moved to begin with was that I wasn't sure I knew what that looked like. I didn't know what it was that I was looking for. So even if it was there, I think, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Um, Even if it was in front of me, I think it was hard to see it
Right.
sometimes because it really was just like you don't really always recognize what is always in front of you and directly in front of you because you have some kind of fog of war or something going on in front of you because you just are battling yourself or some other demon of some sort in your own body, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of how I felt it was like, and I still feel it sometimes. Um, like I don't doubt that I have friends and family who love me, um, but I forget.
Right.
I forget that you guys are there sometimes for me, and I forget that people who actually genuinely love me are there, and not because I don't want to remember them. It's not because I don't want to care for them or be there or that they're with me. I think it's just I just didn't know what it means to have a friend. I didn't know what it means to have a support group. I didn't know what it means, and I think I had to learn what all that looked like, and that's what put me through a lot of development and growth and stress and anxiety and a bunch of other things too. Like it really was like here it is. This is something you if you want to keep living and surviving in this kind of world,
You
you
gotta
have
go
to
through
learn
this.
to change your perspective and really accept that sometimes it's not always going to be the way you might expect it to be
Right.
because not every experience is like it is in the movies. Not every experience is like what they do in TV shows where, you always hang out with your friends and you're always doing things together. You're always laughing and smiling. And perhaps, one crazy drunken night gets you guys like super close together. It doesn't always happen like those kind of movies,
Yeah.
but it does have a lot of internal conflict, right? You have to really learn to develop it and acknowledge it for yourself. And of course, I didn't do this by myself. Like there was no way I could have done this myself and learn it all by myself. Um, I learned to survive by myself for a while, but I didn't really break it down until I moved back to Canada and I started speaking to a professional, right? Speaking to a therapist who
Yeah.
was able to help me start breaking down some of those issues that I had had and the insecurities that I had had, right? And I still carry them with me sometimes. Like they don't go away. You just learn how to manage them a bit better, right? You learn how
This is true.
to cope with them. Sorry, stress just comes and goes sometimes, and you sometimes it's literally for a couple of minutes, and then other times you have anxious moments for a day, right? And I really had to learn to cope, manage, and acknowledge that this is normal and this is part of my life, and that it's okay to, well, to quote the Korean drama, it's okay not to be okay, right? Like it really is, right? Like we've got issues, and it's
Please don't
perfectly
sue
normal.
me for copyright. Didn't
we
expect my guest to
it's
throw it out.
first
Maybe
of
I'm just
all,
gonna like
I can say
blur
it's
that,
okay not to be okay.
mute that.
It's not trademarked.
Okay, but you had to add it was a Korean drama, sir.
No, I didn't. All I said was not to quote. I
Oh,
said
I'm sorry. Henry actually referred to Paul because he's Korean,
yes.
and what Henry's going through is some dramatics back then, so it was okay not to be
Yeah,
okay.
we're good.
We're
We're not
good. We're
referencing any.
good.
We're not referencing anything in the show. I'm not doing any spoilers. Um,
Definitely not.
but I mean, yeah, bringing it back a bit, it really, yeah, it really was a very difficult moment when I started to settle in. It was part of the settling in process, right? For me to move to a new place, right? And that's what it was. That stress was part of me acclimatizing to a new place, a new system, a new way of living, right? A new culture. Um,
Yeah, and you know
and
what?
I'm not sorry.
Sorry, like let me just say before I forget, this is exactly what I was talking about, and it's the delivery between the two of you that just literally made the difference. But it's exactly what Paul had said, right? Like it's that's very interesting to me that it's once you guys actually settled in that you started both of you had started having these kinds of like thoughts in your head where like hold up, and do you feel like, and Paul, I want to throw it back at you for a bit, but do you feel like in some ways like I know you had your support system and I know you had really integrated well. It might be the displacement over the fact that you're actually not home that kind of made you feel that sort of, and I don't know if it's anxiety, I don't know if it's just kind of like a
Mhm,
cognitive distortion that happens every now and then because you're
mhm.
not where you feel like you're supposed to be.
That thought never crossed my mind. And for some reason, that question made me think back and reflect to a lot of the moments where I actually craved to be alone,
Right.
which was almost a first before moving to London.
Mm-hmm.
Because like after after I got more comfortable in my own skin during university, I discovered myself to be quite the social person, right? And
Yes.
I
Yes.
definitely am. I'm very
Oh
social.
yeah. Oh yeah.
However, living in London and despite having those very comfortable social support systems from friends of all sorts,
Of course.
it was during that time in the UK living on my own in that new continent and country that I've one of the biggest things I've learned is the times that I do crave to be on my own. And I found myself embracing being in my room and doing nothing and just it almost felt like a mental detox.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if
Well,
that really
No, that
no,
yeah,
absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
And like
yeah.
Henry, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like that's how Henry felt
Yeah.
sometimes.
I just call it recharging my battery, like
Yeah,
sometimes you
Yeah.
just
I
gotta
guess
do your own
so.
thing,
A
to
very
recharge that battery.
introvertedly viewed kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
like
say
even the
that.
most
Yeah,
extrovert people need to recharge their battery, right?
of
It's
course.
Exactly.
it's just
Yeah.
that's the way it is.
Yeah. I genuinely can't say if what I see as having or seeking out those support systems and finding it was a result of some form of discharge of being away from home and so in my comfort zone. It could have been. I definitely know in order to answer that question a bit more accurately from what I know is that if I didn't have those support systems, I would definitely make an effort to find it if I didn't find it as easily.
Right.
So maybe it was. Yeah,
And and this is the thing, right? Like for a lot of
maybe.
people, like what I said before, is something about like, people do get homesick, but
Yeah.
majority of the time people actually don't. And it's just the fact that it's almost as if you had no more space for yourself because you're so busy trying to integrate into a new space. You're so busy trying to
Mhm.
put your feet on the ground, make sure that you're
Mm,
planted so that your roots can take hold of whatever ground you're standing in so that you can do whatever it is you need to do for yourself, right? But by doing so, we tend to forget that we still need that alone time that you've been craving just to kind of rehash and just kind of assess everything and be like, okay, like this is what's happening now. I got to check in with myself because it's almost
mm,
as if we are taking on the personalities of the environment that we are
mm.
now in, and we tend to lose ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
brings
I
me
have to
back,
agree.
yeah, which
Yeah.
brings
Sorry,
I was gonna say,
sorry.
which brings me back to
Yeah.
Henry, because it's it's when you came home, Henry, it was almost immediately like, yes, you carried on with like with how you felt and like the anxieties and whatever, but it was like a light switch for you that like talking to you, I felt a lot easier, like because I don't know if you remember this. Okay, guys, like I hate to bring this back, but during the time that Paul and Henry were in the UK, the was it a stabbing incident? Remember that, Henry? Do you guys
Stabbing
remember that?
incident?
Yeah, there was like
No.
an incident where like somebody was it shooting or like stabbing random
In
people
the
in random
UK
bars.
or in Canada?
No, in the UK.
Oh yeah,
It was a whole thing.
I've
It was
heard a
like
lot.
a,
Yeah,
yeah. And I
yeah,
remember like, and during this time it was Henry, had reached out to me and he was going through some stuff. And I just felt like, I wish I could have been in the UK to keep an eye out on Henry. Like, like I know we're not supposed to do that. Like, I mean, he's my friend, right? And I felt like I was acting like a dad, but it was one of those things where, like, once Henry set foot back in Canada, I felt at ease because I saw him and I talked to him, and we interacted a couple of times, and it was as if like all of those worries that he had when he was back there was gone. And I know that's not because he was back home at all. I know it wasn't because he was back home with his mom or whatever. It wasn't like that. It was weird. And I felt like, maybe that was like Henry being back to himself in some ways.
I mean, I'd like to think that I didn't come back the same person. I definitely came back as a slightly different, grown, more experienced person,
Right.
more grown into who I am. I think who I am today.
Well
Yes.
said. Yeah.
But
Grown into-
I definitely understand what you mean by that, because, and I think really it had to do with what I had to do to survive being there
Right.
in the UK for that while, learning how to accept that some things are out of my hand, learning how to accept that things aren't always going to go the way I want them to be, right? And that's just the way it is. And once I started to take in some of those acceptances that, I'm not perfect, that I'm going to make mistakes, that I'm, whatever, I think it became a bit easier. It almost became like this lifting of weight off my shoulders kind of thing, right? That old cliche. It just really was very different. And then I think coming back to Canada at that time, I think it really kind of allowed me to sink into my own bed again,
Right.
right? And feel like I'm home, right? Like I had learned, I'd grown, I changed, and now I can take all that back with me, right? So
I
that's
feel
kind
like,
of what I had to do.
the best analysis I have for this, or like the best way
Sorry.
I can explain it is like a video game. You've been out there farming and battling all this time, and you're finally back to the place where you can buy your items to upgrade.
Yeah,
And it was,
yeah,
as silly as it is, I feel like that's exactly how I felt, right? It was like,
yeah,
for the both of you,
Yeah.
you were able to finally get back to base
yeah.
and finally, you know, and Henry's term, buy his items and get weapons. And for Paul, it's to upgrade his artifacts, right? Like, so it's stuff like that.
I
Mhm.
I think I'd also want to add though, like knowing both Paul and I, we actually both had wanted to stay longer, right? We both had wanted to have an opportunity to stay longer too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think not that it's a bad thing that we were essentially
No,
forced
no.
out and you had to come back. I'm grateful to come back to Canada and work and
Same.
teach.
Yeah.
I think it was also just a next level of like, this was just meant to be. This is the next stage of
Yeah.
our lives, right? It had to happen. And I think giving that control up to whatever it was that's beyond me um, was a bit easier. It really was just a bit easier to have that decision made for me. Like I know I had applied to like several schools, and in fact I had like two schools hired me or want to hire me, but they couldn't hire me due to X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Like uh, it's really funny because I still remember thinking like, oh shoot, I'm the only candidate for this. Oh, not the only, but I was the last candidate uh, on this job application. So there was me and this other person, and then it ends up being me, and they wanted to hire on both these schools. And then they realized they can't hire me because of visa complications. They couldn't actually keep me in the UK. So it was another hot mess and a half. But like, again, I'm happy that I came back, and I think I'm very fortunate that, in fact, I like pretty much after what, like 3 or so, no, sorry, yeah, maybe 2 or 3 months of me coming back to Canada, I pretty much got onto a board to teach and supply and do some work right away. And like I think that made it a lot easier for me to transition back,
Right.
because like we were saying earlier, hinting that keeping yourself busy doesn't allow you the moment to really feel that stress right away, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't sink in just yet. So I came back, I found a part-time job, I started working, and then I got another work. Then I got into my permanent but also not permanent teaching gigs.
Right.
And then now I'm just like too busy thinking about how to make sure that I feed, my kids, and make sure that they are, well taught and understand what's going on, and meet the expectations and all this other stuff. Right. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what was different for me when I came back here. And I think also the relief of just being able to come back to see friends and family again, and I still remember coming back on my first day, and I had dinner with my family, my cousins, my aunt, and my brother, and my mom. We were all together, and I just it felt very different, right?
Right.
It felt like I had not just grown up a whole bunch, but like I had come back to a different situation as a new person. Because I still remember my cousins like kind of joking with me, like um, they're like, Henry, when did you get so fit? I'm like, I I don't know. I didn't really work out any harder, but like I definitely it just growth, right? And I
Right.
think just the overall the way I carried myself was a bit different, and I think um, learning to love myself a bit more really helped, right? Like
I
learning
think
to
yeah.
accept those things really helped how I carry myself. It's not just like how I look, but like sometimes
No,
your presence is just it carries out, and people feel that, right?
it is
And
true. Your
that
experiences really, like end up kind of really changing the way you look on the
it shaped
outside
me.
too.
Yeah.
It
So
shapes you.
it was really really unique coming back to this, and yeah, I'm really happy uh, to be back here. But then
No,
yeah,
I'm really glad to hear that because I'm glad you're back here. And it's a great kind of like full circle kind of ending to your story in terms of how it's like to be there, right? It's at the end of the day, you went there to teach and you came back and you're still teaching. And
yeah,
it's not even just the teaching experience that you got, it
no,
literally taught you everything about yourself.
yeah.
Paul, how long when you came back, how long did it take you to kind of get into teaching here in Canada?
If I can remember correctly, I came back around early May in the month.
Mhm.
And then scrambling because, just like Henry, I came out of my own control and quite unexpectedly.
Right.
I got to the point where I was working 3 part-time jobs until okay, anyway, until I got a teaching job, which took me, I think, until I got hired in December that same year cycle. So
Okay.
May, June, July, August. A good 6, 7 months, half a year. Yeah.
Right.
Took me a while.
I remember you were juggling your jobs. Like what were the jobs that you
Yeah.
got?
So by the end of it, I was working 7 days a week and 3 part-time jobs, which included Kumon Learning Center,
Right.
which is the most applicable to my profession now. My
Right.
other 2 jobs included working at a private school, music theory, which actually was also something that helped. And thirdly, working at Real Fruit Bubble Tea. And I learned so much there. It was amazing.
I loved when you worked there because I like
Yeah.
seeing you just do that stuff.
Yeah. I learned a lot about how to handle fruits and certain nice skills and how they make bubble tea and slushies and what was real fruits and what was not. It was great.
Yeah, that was the
But
weird thing to me. Is you're
Yeah.
always saying things like, "Oh my god, did you know that was an actual real fruit?" I'm like, "Wait, why am I going there for that?"
yeah. But yeah, it took me a good half a year to get the teaching opportunities back. And I think part of the reason though was because I was so busy trying to get myself afloat first. Because I came back unexpectedly at a timing that was difficult for me to just pick up and keep going. I had to
Right.
stop. Okay, let me float up a little bit. Yeah,
I
I'd
think
say
that's
so.
and that's great, right? Like honestly, the same way with Henry. Like eventually it did work out. And it's
Oh
almost as if
yeah,
you knew it was gonna
definitely.
work out anyway, right? It's like
Yeah.
and I like this is this is why I just want to say thank you for the both of you for actually coming on the show and telling your side of the stories because it is so fucking different, right? And this is
Yeah.
exactly what I want to show people. There's so many people out there that get discouraged because they didn't have the kind of ending you'd have, Paul, or they get so discouraged because they didn't have the kind of experiences that Henry had, right? In terms of like growth and everything else. And I think it's just very important for people to understand that you can't compare yourself to anybody else. There will be
No,
similarities with other people, yes, but that doesn't mean that the ending that that person has will be the same for you.
No.
You know what I mean? And I think it's very important that we touched upon these subjects of what you guys had to go through, whether it was good or bad, whether it was, just kind of like normal or really dramatic or not, because for a lot of people, this is where their mental health starts to deteriorate. it's when you start to get into the habit of comparing,
Mhm.
and you start to get into the habit of making yourself feel like you're not good enough for certain situations because you're discouraged about something. And it, painting the stories that you both had shared tonight, it really goes to show, and this is why I said, like, you both had the same outcome. You both grew as people, right? Sure, like, it seemed, and I would say seemed, like Paul might have had an easier time because he, felt really at ease integrating or whatever, and he would only have random, kind of like, oh yeah, I just feel like I need to be myself. So it seemed like he had a better time than Henry because he wasn't displaced 3 times involuntarily, right? But with the kind of personality that you guys are seeing, right? With how Paul talks and how Henry talks, you can just tell that I always say this too, and it goes for like relationships as well. Like you can't say somebody doesn't love you because they love you differently than
Mhm.
you want to be loved, right? And that is,
Yeah.
I think that is the best way I can explain this.
Yeah.
It's like we can't compare Henry's story and Paul's story in that sense.
Yeah.
Because what might be really difficult for Paul could actually be something that Henry can do with his eyes closed every day, and vice
Yeah.
versa, right?
Mhm.
So I just kind of want you guys to really, I want you guys, you listeners or viewers, to take away from this whole thing is that everybody is different. And what these guys had to do was just persevere,
Yeah.
regardless of what they had to go through, because at the end of the day, they knew that there was no other choice.
Yeah.
They knew that this is the path that they wanted to go on. This is what they wanted to be. And at the end of the day, it made them better people, not just better teachers, but better individuals. And at some point, this is what, like what Henry said earlier, sometimes we don't realize these are things we have to do to ourselves to kind of bring us to that next level in our lives. And sure, it's going to leave us with some baggage that we may never, ever get rid of ever again, you know? But it's all in how you handle it. And it's all in how you're able to carry that baggage throughout the entire rest of your life. How are you going to make that into something that really defines who you are?
Mhm.
And not in a negative way, right? So
Mhm.
I just want to say, honestly, guys, you guys were amazing. Thank you so much for really sharing this, because this has been an eye opener for a lot of people. I mean, for me, and I've known you guys for so long, right? But I've always wanted to do this, but it was just kind of awkward doing this in a room with just the two of you,
Yeah.
because it was like, hey guys, so tell me about it. Was one of those things where it was just kind of, it was not gonna happen like that. Like the way we get together, we always get with the guys, we always get with the group, with the
Yeah.
girls and everything. And it's, it never gets too serious because it just feels like the aura is kind of off. I don't know. Like, I don't know if you guys ever noticed that we don't really have actual serious talks in a group setting. Like, we always just end
Uh,
up kind of like fucking around, which is fine. I don't
yeah.
mind, right? But I
Yeah.
felt like this is one of the things I've always wanted to kind of happen, because
Yeah.
again, hearing your sides of the stories from me, I was just kind of like, wow, I wonder if they've heard it, like to each other. And so yeah, thank you for being a part of this so much. And it's during an important week too. So honestly, thank you guys for
Definitely.
taking the time to do this.
So
Sure.
I just want to interject one more thing for the record. It wasn't all bad for me. It wasn't all just like I'm in the hole the whole time. I had some great times there too. Like, I think it's also important to I wanted to share that as well. Like, I
Yeah.
I really did learn to build my own system, learn to be more extroverted, learn to speak with people, learn to communicate with people. I literally had to research how to make new friends essentially in a foreign country. And I essentially put myself out there, right?
Yeah.
Like some people do with dating or whatever. You put yourself out there, and
Mhm.
eventually you're going to meet people who mesh with you well. I literally
Yeah.
went to a board game cafe essentially, and I met a bunch of friends, and I still chat with them, every now and again, because great advantage of technology, right? Like, I can still chat with them, and we'll talk about whatever, right? Like, and this all stemmed from going to a little board game cafe, throwing myself out there and making myself vulnerable, right? And willing to take that chance and that opportunity to show myself to someone else, right? And
Yeah.
I met these people who are, again, locals in the UK, grew up there, lived there their entire lives. Some of them were born there. One of them actually I met was actually born in Ontario, but his parents moved to the UK, so he pretty much is British, as far as anyone else can say, right? Um, but like you really learn to meet people, and I think the biggest thing about that is I think that people really kind of make the experience at the end of the day.
Right.
And I'm really glad that I shared some of those great experiences there still, like whether it be going to travel with them across Europe and traveling with Paul, even for that fact, across Europe for several parts. It was just a great experience overall. Like, yeah, we can carry some bad stuff with us too, but like it was really, at the end of the day, the experience is what you make of it. And
Exactly.
I tried my best to make sure I had come out on top as much
And
as I
you
can.
did, right? And that's
Yeah,
exactly what it was. That's exactly what persevering did. It's
yeah,
you knew the things that you have to do to claim your own happiness, and you did
yep,
it.
yep.
Yeah. I'd like to add in a little bit of my perspective as well, where, like, for the most part, in the general picture, my experience living in the UK was very good. But just like what Henry said, like all those experiences, good or bad, difficult or easy, whatever it was for anyone, I've learned that from the experiences I've made that, like I said, when I came back home for good in Canada, despite all the good times I had and even the bad times, I came back feeling completely different as the same person. This is my second time
Mhm.
saying that. And it is because of all the accumulation of experiences, good and bad, that we've both felt.
Yeah,
And even if we both experienced it very differently, like like you said, Stephen, it seems like we both came out with pretty much the same outcome of a definite significant growth.
Yeah.
And I realize that it's not just the painful growths that make you grow into a person. It's not just the tolerance levels getting higher. It's
Mm-hmm.
just different perspectives of anything and everything, and
Mhm.
incorporating that into your own mentality and how you view yourself and others and things in your life that just broaden your perspective and make you really think in a in a much broader and grown kind of way. I don't know.
No, that makes total
Yeah,
fucking sense, man.
like I am very happy to have experienced what I did and
Yeah.
came back. Yeah, I do feel very
Honestly, the
different.
both of you made me wish I just picked up teaching instead of trying cannabis. Maybe I wouldn't have had to fucking go on a psychotic episode to really grow. You know, maybe I could have just taught and be like, fuck, guess what? I'm a grown person now.
but
Living in a
I
new
think
country
this is
really forces you to grow. I tell you that.
that's
Living in
true.
a new
Yeah,
place where you have no clue what's going on,
yeah,
like,
yeah. Like I didn't I didn't land in the UK knowing everything either. It was a
Right.
lot of learning curves because we were on our own, quote unquote.
And you know
mhm.
what?
It was good.
Like your
Yeah.
stories really told that, right? Like, and these are just things that you would never expect from people, right?
Yeah.
Everyone glamorizes being somewhere else.
Hmm.
We all kind of ignore it when people complain on our feeds about how hard it is living in a different country, all because we feel like, no, like we're jealous because we want to do that too.
Yeah,
We kind of end up clicking their statuses with like a fucking like a haha, or just liking their Instagram post and just commenting like LOL, like you got this. And it's like, I think if anything, hopefully this prompts people to actually take the time, and not just your fellow teachers, right? Just ask anybody who had just moved or just started something new to kind of like check up on them,
yeah,
Mm.
be that support system that they're still looking for, if they're still
yeah.
looking for it right now, right? And you don't have to be in the same place to be able to, I mean, it's COVID now, right? You don't have to be in the same fucking room to do this, right? But it's just about being there for each other. And clearly you both found really great people during those times that you guys needed that.
Mhm.
And that's what made the experience all the more
Just to
better.
change perspective on something, like I think it's really important to note, like when we're scrolling through social media or whatever, it's very different when you live somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very different from when you vacation somewhere.
Oh
Yes.
yes.
It's a huge
Yes.
difference. Um, like we can all have amazing vacation experiences in whatever country,
Right.
right? And then you realize that the locals are living this really shitty life that they're not happy about.
Mm-hmm.
And until you've lived that life, it's really hard to know what people are experiencing or going through, right? Like I think this is where having empathy and sympathy for other people around the world, especially true today, with all, and not to make this about the anti-Asian hate crime or the Black Lives Matter movement, whatever, stuff like that at all, right? But it really is, we need to have that empathy for people. And when you realize that living somewhere versus seeing an Instagram model on vacation is very, very different, right? I thought London would be great, all like fish and chips and like Cheerio, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that was one of the biggest letdowns. The fish and
Yeah.
chips there wasn't that great.
It was
Oh my
garbage.
goodness,
fish and
guys, we
chips,
are
and their
not
food was
inciting
bad.
a war against the UK.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Guys.
But I think I have I think I have the right to say their Asian food was really kind of bad.
Yes, you do have the right to say that.
It really was very
Okay.
bland, and I
With
think it
our
had to do with the
standards,
fact that
yeah.
they just didn't import the same kind of spices that we would need. They don't have the same.
Yeah.
I think their Indian food was fantastic. Don't get me
Okay.
wrong. I think that came with the idea of
Colonialism.
hundreds of years of colonization.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, we are unpacking so much shit here right now, guys, but I do need to cut this because y'all are going into some uncharted territories that I'm not ready for right now.
Yeah.
But and let's also not attack a country's.
No, we're just joking about the food right now. I
We're not joking about fish and chips. It's okay, but we will let that slide, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm actually thank you for saying that because I did want to go there for the fish and chips. Okay.
Well,
But
for the record, the fish and chips in London was meh, but outside, I think if you visit by the waters and by the seas where the fish is fresh,
more like
that was a very different thing. I think that was
Okay.
very key.
There
Right,
you
like,
go. See, guys, perspective.
Very different thing.
It's all about perspective for anything and everything.
Perspective, guys. You gotta learn to look at that glass a different way.
Oh my goodness. But yes, we are out of time. We've been out of time, but you know what? I just had to do this with y'all, but it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know this is another long episode. Are my episodes going to be long all week? Most motherfucking likely. But hey, you know what? Whatever. I hope you guys still are tuning in. And if you're not, well, y'all missed out on fish and chip suggestions, but whatever. If you have any questions for Paul or Henry or myself, which y'all never fucking do, you can email me at stephendiego@hotmail.com. I'll leave the link on the link thingy-mabobbers. Thank you again, Paul. Thank you again, Henry. If you have any questions for them as well, please just email me. We'll get back to you. If you or a teacher that you know needs a job, I'm kidding. They can't really get you a job.
No, I can't actually give you a job.
They can
I wish I
give you
could.
solid advice on how to hang in there while waiting for an interview. But thank you guys. This has been Breaking Down the Breakdown. I will see y'all tomorrow or whenever you guys fucking listen to this again. Goodbye.